Hey there, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Bobby Legs, and this is another episode of Watch Soup Light this evening. Yes, if you're unfamiliar with Watch Soup or Watch Soup Light, as I've been calling it the last couple weeks, I review a couple of the videos from the main watch content creators out there and do a little breakdown and analysis and formulate my thoughts on what the topics of discussion are. And hopefully, you guys can jump in the chat and give some feedback and and your comments, and we can have a nice little discussion here for about 30 or 40 minutes. Anyway, hey, I got on wrist this evening. I have it on the side here, but this is my Citizen Series 8, still honeymooning with this timepiece. Loving it. Just love the whole integrated bracelet kind of thing. Can't afford some of the big dogs, but this one's good for now, right? And I'm very happy with this timepiece. Let's say hello to some of you guys who are in the chat this evening. Hey, got Marceau here. Hey, Marceau, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Marceau's wearing his Grand Seiko chronograph this evening. Awesome, great watch. Maison's here. Hey, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Wearing his pajamas tonight. Let me guess. You got Moser on, or Breitling. Mes9 is here. Good to be with. Good to for you to be with us here, Mes9. Appreciate it. What do you have on wrist? Let me know. Same for you, Mr. Steve. Time Hell. What do you have on wrist? It's good to see you here. Hey, Rick. Awesome for you to join us this evening. Going to go over a couple of videos tonight for Watch Soup Light. Both happen to be WatchChris videos. WatchChris, a friend of the show, friend of the channel here. And he had a couple of videos in the last week, which I think can spark some discussion, and definitely were an interesting watch, as Chris does. I mean, Chris is very, very prolific. Tons of videos, tons of reviews, tons of opinions, and he has great opinions. And I like his taste in timepieces. He's not a run of the mill, kind of like taste. He's not like gonna have Rolex in his collection, right? He's not gonna have some of the more iconic models per se, but he'll have brands like Vacheron, and others, very high-end luxury timepieces, but a model that you wouldn't consider something that it would be typical of that brand. I mean, I think he does have an overseas, but in Vacheron, but it's not your typical three-hander overseas, right? It's a little different. So I like his taste in timepieces. Time Hill, he's wearing the Pepsi tonight. Hey, Nate Dog, good to see you, buddy. Eric is here. How you doing? Samurai the last few days for Mes9. We're in the G-Shock today. Rick, good, awesome. Good to see that. And Mr. Wilson is here. How you doing, Mr. Wilson? And Caliber YQG. Good to see you. Okay, so let's just jump into the first video, and that is who are buying Rolex watches in 2025. And so the premise of this video is why Rolex, right? And he teases that he's going to mention another um, watch brand at the end of the video, but Rolex mainly is no longer, they don't really make watch for enthusiasts anymore, right? Which is, to his admission, a very, very bold statement. And this is where he's going with this, right? So he backs it up with giving some statistics just as a baseline for the discussion, right? So he mentions that Rolex makes about over 1 million watches a year, right? And interesting enough, Omega, right? Seemingly a competitor to Rolex, right? I mean, we see Rolex and Omega kind of like named in the same, grouped in the same kind of discussion, right? Omega makes about 500,000 watches, and and I think you probably would agree. But I mean, Omega seems to have a much bigger catalog, right, than Rolex does. Um, he claims that some people associate Rolex with the Holy Trinity of watches, and he definitely takes issue on that. I mean, he correctly names the Holy Trinity, well, correctly as we have commonly agreed as a watch community, right? As Patek, Vacheron, and AP. Um, but um, but a lot of people who maybe are not as familiar with those brands, and familiar though with like the concept of the Holy Trinity of watch brands, will put Rolex in there, and his he takes a lot of issue with that, right? Because he's arguing that these are Rolex are assembly line made, right? I mean, it's great quality stuff. Don't get him wrong, or don't get it wrong, but it doesn't have like the hand finishing like these other brands in the Holy Trinity have. And so like Patek, puts out about 60,000 watches a year, AP around 50, and Vacheron 35,000 watches a year. He breaks it down to there's three main types of collectors as he sees it, right? You have the people who really love Rolex, right? And he says that this is a dying breed. They collect vintage Rolex. They know the different model numbers and the differences and the rarities of some of the models, and will spend the money, to um, get those timepieces, right? But they're a dying breed. And then he says that the second different collector is the overall watch collector, right? They own different brands, and they may own some Rolex. They appreciate Rolex. Rolex does make great watches. I mean, they are great watches, right? The quality is there. He repeats some stories that he's heard from people who watch his shows and who comment that they've had Rolex for like 50 years, Rolex watch, and never had it serviced, etc. So um, he's not denying that Rolex makes good watches. The third type of collector, though, he laments, is the hype collector, right? And they will only purchase modern Rolex, and they want people to know, right, that they've spent a lot of money on a watch, and they do it all for the social media kind of thing, right? Um, so that's the main three collectors, and sadly, he thinks that you get more and more of these like kind of a hype collectors, and another type of collector like the regular everyday people who, because of Rolex's brand recognition, may aspire just to get a Rolex one day, like when they retire or for graduation. And he says that's really, he believes, is where the bulk of the buying is coming from. A lot of these hype collectors and a lot of these like regular everyday collectors. He also mentions that there's another kind of collector that he, you know, I wouldn't say despise. I don't know if that's a word he would use, but it's called the investor, right? He names it the investor, and he always gets questions from people is like, what is a good watch to invest in, right? And so these are the people, and I've you know a lot of people in like my social group who may not know about watches, right? They'll ask me that question too, like, what's a good watch to invest? And I personally say, and I think Chris will agree, that watches aren't investments. Sure, you may have a one-off where retains its value, or you can make some money off of, you may have one of those, you may have several of those in a collection, but typically you're always going to lose money on on um, on these kind of watches. Um, Finally, he lists some reasons why he won't own Rolex. Actually, before I get into that, he did, as I mentioned earlier, he did tease about another brand that's getting that way, and he feels that AP, specifically the Royal Oak, is becoming that hype piece, right? And we've seen this, in the last couple of years with some of these social content creators, right? With the showing off the blinged out Rolex or the blinged out Royal Oak, and that's become kind of very very hype watchy, right? And so he sees the Royal Oak and AP. He calls them AP a one trick pony. Um, in that same vein as, they don't really make watches for enthusiasts. Finally, he says, the reason why he won't own Rolex is because he doesn't want to pay retail. He doesn't pay retail for any of his timepieces, right? So he won't be able to develop that relationship, right, in order to get some of these Rolex pieces, right? And also, he doesn't want to go somewhere, um, and then somebody in the same room has the same watch he has, the Submariner, right? Or the Pepsi, whatever. He doesn't. He likes the fact that his and I think, and I'm just saying this because I know him. I've had conversations with him. Like, he likes the fact that he has some pieces that maybe people don't have, right? And he likes to be like that, that guy, And so, I think he's making a pretty big statement here, right? That Rolexes are no longer make watches for enthusiasts. I don't know if that's an intentional, right, um, thing, that Rolex is not making watches for enthusiasts. I mean, I don't think Chris is necessarily arguing that Rolex is intentionally not making these watches, but the way that people react to Rolex, right? Um, you get a lot of people who are just in it for showing off, right? Showing how much they paid for the watch, like he says, um, for the hype of it. I have to admit, like, a few years ago, I got caught up in that. I mean, I wasn't the kind of guy that was, flashing it on Instagram. Actually, that's not me at all. Like, I actually got nervous about having the timepieces, and I eventually sold them off. Those timepieces, the Submariner and the Air King, because I just didn't feel comfortable wearing them out in the open, because I felt like, whether it was a real feeling or not, right? Whether people were watching me or not, like, I felt like, there was a target on me, if they saw me, that if I had a Rolex on, and having a watch that was like, 12 or 13 thousand dollars on wrist, in a city environment, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasts out there who appreciate Rolex for what it is, and you may see, some who have one or two in their collection, but the way they've marketed themselves over the last couple decades, especially, it's one of these names where people recognize it, like Nike, like Apple, right? And do people do aspire, you know, to have that Rolex, right? They don't necessarily have to be an enthusiast or a watch collector. It could be just something like an achievement, to get. Anyway, let me take a look at the comments, see what you guys have to say. And Wilson saying, who's buying Rolex in 2025? Only about 1 million people. Yeah. Um, let's see here. I never agreed to that Trinity. Okay. What is your Trinity caliber? I like to hear that. Hey, Webman, good to see you. Under Two WatchChris won't play Rolex AD games or pay over retail, hence no Rolex. Yeah, exactly. And he admits to that, right? And that's probably why he would never purchase Rolex. Doesn't mean that he doesn't like Rolex. I think that he mentioned maybe there's like a piece or two that he found interesting. But it's just not. He's not going to play those games, right? And he's not going to pay over retail. And look, I mean, like, if you want to survive as a collector, and this is just my 2 cents, um, and you want to get those luxury timepieces, right? You can't, like, I know for me, like, I can't pay retail for all of them or any of them. Most of them I can't do it. Um, I've made my peace with being okay with not having to get a new watch every time. Like, I can get it pre-owned, let that original buyer take the hit on the watch, and then maybe get it for, like, 30, 40, 50% off of its, original price of maybe a little older version of a model that I'm interested in, and that's the way I have to do my collecting, because watches are expensive, right? The kind of watches that I like are expensive. Um, so yeah. Um, playing AD games is not in the cards for me. I would have to say. Um, Wayben, greetings all. Say happy birthday. Wearing a Satori Billard. Now the celebration was well. Happy birthday to you, buddy. That investment grade Rolex aren't sold to people who want to buy one as an investment. Yeah. Some of what says is spot on. The other elements are a bit quirky, but he does a nice job overall. I agree. Hey, KR Joy, what's up? Good to see you. Maison saying, for me, I don't like the Cyclop dates, so that rules out most of their range out of what remains. I only like the Sub and Explorer 1. I tried the Explorer 40, and it was too small. The Sub is too recognizable. Hmm. Yeah. Eric is saying there's room for a Rolex in my collection, but there's no room in my budget for one right now. Very true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Mason, I also won't pay over MSRP or play stupid AD games. Yeah, yeah. Like, look, I mean, like I didn't really have to play kind of any games to get my Submariner or my Air King. I just had to wait. Um, the Submariner, my friend Ahmed made the introduction um, to the salesperson, and about 6 months later, 6 or 7 months later, I got the call for the Submariner, and then I went to a boutique a little closer to me. Right, the first boutique was in Boston, and that's like a 5 hour drive from where I live. Right, that was an epic day. When I went to pick it up. That was an epic day. That was a lot of driving. Um, so I found a boutique near me, close, about 40-50 minute drive, and I went in there and I spoke to a sales rep, and I forget if he was suggested to me by somebody or not, or I had just happened to meet him. I think I just happened to meet him, and I went there, talked to him once, and then I went there again, and I expressed my interest in an Air King, and I think maybe because um, I wouldn't call this was the previous gen Air King, right? Um, I mean, every sports watch at the time, and this was like maybe 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, every sports watch, Rolex sports watch was kind of in demand, right? Some more than others, of course. And I told them I had interest in the Air King, and then a few months later, I got that call. So like I didn't have to like buy like 30 tutors or you know what I mean. So I feel like in a sense I did get lucky, but I do sympathize with others. I've heard people's stories about you know purchasing watches or jewelry, perhaps jewelry or watches that they didn't intend to keep just to build a purchase history. So I mean that does exist, right? I mean I think my situation was the not common, right? The whole playing the game is more common. So I can't really speak to playing the game as much. 'Cause that wasn't my experience. It was just more of the game was just being patient, and eventually I got there. And I think like having that conversation with the sales rep a few times, meeting them in person a few times, and they understood my love for watches and my desire to become a Rolex collector at the time, which I definitely plan on doing. Um, helped me. I mean, having good conversation and leaving a mark in that person's memory. That also helped. So I guess that is a form of a game, but it wasn't like I had to make additional purchases that I wouldn't have wanted to make normally. Um, KR is saying I pay retail for things that hold or increase in value. Rolex is one. Yeah, I mean, yes, I would probably Rolex would be the only thing I'd pay retail for. So let me amend my statement. If I had the compulsion to buy another Rolex, I would consider paying MSRP for it. I wouldn't pay over MSRP for a Rolex. I never consider that. But I would pay MSRP, and I'll pay, of course, I pay under MSRP for Rolex, but I wouldn't pay anything more than that. Yeah, the flowers. Yeah, my little flower, my little Rolex flower. Those were the days. Those were the days. Okay, so yeah, food for thought. Good video by Chris, and let's jump over to his next video. And awesome watches that he will never buy or buy again. Now, he's going to list out here. We're going to talk about 7 different brands of watches that he's owned, and so he's actually owned these watches, right? And then he discusses like why he wouldn't buy them again. And so, some of these are, he believes are controversial. Some of them maybe not so. We'll let you be the judge. And if you could think of a brand that you think is awesome, but you will never buy, please put it in the comments, and let's discuss. But let's go over his list. And the first is the Tudor, specifically the Black Bay. He feels that it's an homage to the Submariner, right? That's the biggest problem for him. It's very common now, right? I mean, you see a lot of people wearing these watches, and it's almost like everybody, people wearing Submariners now. Everybody's like wearing, Tudor Black Bays, right? Um, but it's not a sub, right? It's not the same thing. And he's owned it. He likes that there's different variations of um, the Black Bay, like the silver, the 925, right? I mean, he liked the fact that that was part of the lineup, right? But he will probably never ever go back to buying a Tudor. Uh, the next brand, Ball watches. He's owned an engineer too. He likes, generally likes the way they look. But he's found them 2 reasons that why he'll never go back. Um, he finds that they weren't comfortable on wrist, and I've heard this about the bracelet. Like, it's difficult on Ball bracelets to you know hone in on that perfect fit, to drill down and get that right fit on those. And also, the name kind of bothered him, right? Like when people ask him what he's wearing, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I got a ball on my wrist," right? And so, so he totally understands the history of it and appreciates, everything about the history of the watch and the name about it. But it's just like one of those things where, like, he's got to explain that he's got a ball on his wrist, right? Which I got a nice little chuckle out of, because, like, "Hey, Junior, how you doing?" Because that's exactly like the first time I heard ball watches is like, "Oh, I get balls," like, like who's gonna who's gonna get balls on, anyway. Number 3, like, and this is another one that he felt was kind of controversial, was Grand Seiko. Um, and some of the positives he wants, the dial work, right? I mean, the dials on Grand Seiko watches are just amazing, and I think we can all agree on that, right? That they just have some great dial work, great polishing. The cases are polished, um, just beautifully done. The indices, the hands, the Saratsu polishing, it's just amazing work. Like, it's just like they got it down. They got that stuff down, Grand Seiko. And to me, like, there's not many that do it better. But a couple things for him, right? I mean, like, the bracelets and the clasp are the issue for him, right? Like, he feels like the bracelets are cheap. I mean, can you get, like, can we get some screwed in links, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I've had one Grand Seiko in my collecting, and I just took it off the the bracelet and put a strap on, because a leather strap, because, well, I kind of like the look of it better, and that bracelet was, like, really polished, and I just didn't want to scuff it up so much, because I didn't know if I was going to keep it, and I didn't. um but can we get some screw in links, and also can we get some micro adjust, right? On the class. And he's like, how can we have all these micro brands able to do these micro adjusts on the class, and Grand Seiko can't do it? And he admits, like, I think he's just recently, a couple models have had the micro adjust, but I mean, for the longest time, what's up with that? What's up with the bracelets and the class? And that's a common complaint I've heard throughout the years, where people just, not getting the right fit on the bracelet, right? And it seems like that was the one thing that was lacking, that they lacked with the bracelet. I feel that way about, for the longest time with Zen. like with that H link, like for the longest time, I mean, you put all this tech into a watch, and you kind of fell short on the bracelet side of it. So Chris feels the same way about the Grand Seiko. Number four, Breitling. Overall, the aesthetic of the new Breitling, right? The models in the last couple of years don't really appeal to him. He loves that vintage Navitimer, that some of the older Breitlings, and I tend to agree with him. I mean, yes, there are a couple newer Breitlings that that I find, like, attractive, but I definitely prefer some of the old Navitimers, right? I mean, they're just like, those are just watches are just gorgeous, and big fan of that. But Breitling, not for Chris anymore. Not the new Breitling anyway. Number five, Ming, right? Not a fan of those lugs that fan out and the interaction with the bracelet and those lugs. No on the fly micro adjust. Yeah, I mean, um, I think Chris is like, one of the first things he does also with Ming. I believe he said that this was Ming's, take off the bracelet or whatever. I don't know, but like he just couldn't find like a good bracelet, um, you know, um, and lug interaction. Those lugs do fan out on some of those models, right? And it just doesn't. It just looks a little weird to me as well. Like, what's going on here? Um, so no Ming for Chris, even though he goes back and he looks online and kind of like, like what we do, right? Like we get rid of something, and then we forget the reasons why we got rid of it, and then we look back on it and we're like, oh, I wish I could get one of those back in the collection. Number six, Blanc Pawn. Current watches not appealing to him, um, not capturing the male audience with the recent releases, with the smaller releases of the 50 Fathoms. And I had a discussion about this with my friends today in the watch community, talking about how they've come out with the 38 as part of 50 Fathoms, to go along with the original 45 and the 42, and how the 38, for me, like, who's that meant for? Um, they kind of missed the boat at the 40, right? The 40 millimeter would have been a perfect size, and my friend Finney told me, well, they reserved that 40 spot for like the limited editions, right? Which he says, which we all kind of talked about, how like that was like a missed opportunity. Had that, and Finney was saying, had that on the 42, right? On the 40, on the 42 size, and just keep the 40 for regular production. And I think that would have been, wise, right? Um, I don't know. I don't know how many people are going for a 38 millimeter fifth fathoms. And especially the ones that came out today, um, the production ones. I mean, they're not feminine at all. I don't see like women doing, although they did come out with some precious metal pieces of the 36, that of the 50 fathoms on that size, that may be appealing to women, but I just don't think that you're buying that, or most people aren't buying that. Um, and finally, Hamilton. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, some of the recent releases have been duds in his mind, and even some of the, their regular, classic timepieces. Their sister brands, like Mito and Tissot, are building similar type watches for a far less price point. So his advice to Hamilton is bring that pricing down a little bit, right? Um, because Tissot and Mito are putting out similar things, and for a little bit less. Anyway, guys, let's see what you guys about ball. Chuckle too, like a teenager. Yeah, Mark P, I've got a ball on my wrist right now. Once upon a time, I had three balls. Yep, yep. Here we go. Every watch should have two balls, not more, not less. Every watch guy. Okay. Yep. Breitling equal, not a fan of outer AR scratches. Okay, fair enough. Then, then I think Lance Armstrong cannot be a brand ambassador now. No, I don't think he can. I don't think he can. Um, neither is John Crook, right? Oh, is that it? Is that the last of the famous mono testicle famous people that we know? That is that is that is that it? Those 42 were smaller than the specs suggest. I think you want a 40 millimeter, go for a 42. Okay, good point. I mean, like, that's good to know. I've never tried a 42. If it feels like a 40, then that's great. 39, 38 gives a great option. I mean, like, so then does the 38 feel like it's a smaller? Does it feel like a 36? I mean, I just don't know. At the 38 millimeter, right? I mean, like, I would argue Maison. I mean, I know the movement in the Bon Pon is heads and shoulders above like a Black Bay 58. I know it's got 100-hour power reserve on the Blind Pond. But is it worth like three times the price of a Black Bay 58 around the same size? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Do I want to then pay 15,000 or whatever it is dollars for a 38 millimeter diver? I don't know. Is it worth more than a Rolex Submariner at MSRP? Um, I don't know. Or a Seamaster. Um, I usually like one or two models of any brand, so I disagreed with the entire premise of this video. Uh, of any brand here, yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, I think Chris has gone through so many watches, right? When you're a prolific I mean, like, if you're, I mean, he divides up his like watch collection videos every year into like three or four different videos. Um, so like he's got an opinion, right? I mean, I think his opinion is based on his experience, and which is definitely different than mine, and definitely different than yours. So when he says that he will never go back to Breitling, or that he'll probably never buy another Tudor or Ming or Hamilton or Grand Seiko, I mean, I believe him. I mean, and it's based on like on his experience, right? And perhaps maybe if these brands made the changes that he suggests, he may go back. I mean, I don't see him going back to Black Bay, right? I don't see him going back to a Tudor Black Bay, but maybe it sounded like he left the door open for like Grand Seiko, right? If they just improve that bracelet and class. It sounds like he wants to go back to a Ming, right? Um, right. I mean, he does have Hamilton. He considered himself at one point a Hamilton collector. He had over 10 of them, you know. So some of these brands I think he could go back to if they make those changes. But some I just don't think. I mean, I don't think. I mean, at this point, is he going to go back to a ball, wearing a ball watch? I mean, like, the fact that he doesn't want to explain wearing a ball on his wrist, no matter what they do, it could be the best watch in the world. It sounds like he's not going back to wearing a ball watch. Uh, um, the 50 fathom sticking point is the darn price, but you're paying for high horology. Absolutely. But see, okay, so then my argument to that, right, which has nothing to do with the size, is that do I want to spend that kind of money on a high horology diver, right? And I know that's a different argument. That's a totally different argument. Like, for me, to me, that um is not the avenue I would go down, right? I've owned a Submariner. I don't consider that high horology, right? Um, that's not a knock. I've never owned a Seamaster. I would consider owning a Seamaster. That's not high horology. That's not a knock, right? Those are tool watches with exceptional movements in there, but nothing that's like you know hand finished. You know what I mean? So, like, for me, like, spending that kind of dough, like 14, 15 grand on a diver, um, that's not like how I would do it. If anybody wants to do that, that's totally fine. That's good on them. That's just not me. I rather like a dress piece, right? That's where like the hierology for me, kind of like that's where I see it being worth it, right? Um, Hierology, calendar watch, right? Which I probably wouldn't buy. Um, Chrono, depends. Yeah, I don't know why I would make an exception on a tool watch like a chrono. I mean, as opposed to a diver, but I mean, like I think it's obviously it's there's a complication there, and some chronos are just like finished like crazy, and have great in-house movements. Um, Amir, I wonder what you think about the DS2 Hamilton. DS2 Hamilton. Let's see here. Uh, I'm pulling it up first before. Okay, let's remove that because we're pretty much done with that. Um, okay, introducing Hamilton's latest video game collab, the limited edition Bolton for DS, Death Stranding 2, the iconic brand and a beloved video game designer team up the new futuristic release. Okay. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's not for me. I mean, this is not the kind of like style watch that that I'm into. I would have to see this in person because it feels like I don't get that much contrast with the hands and the dial here. At least the hour and a minute hand. Um, that seconds hand is striking. Kind of looks like a little spaceship car thing going on here. Maybe that's part of how the game is. I've never heard of the game before. Um, 1500. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, 2000 pieces, not really a limited edition. Titanium bracelet. Okay. Titanium case. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, not for me. I got to be honest with you. But I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Let's see here. I thought I wouldn't buy another tutor, and then I saw one I liked and bought another tutor. And it has been 5 years, so you never. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, like, I think like we all have reserved the right to change our minds, right? So I never say, even though I never say never, even though I said three times in a sentence. Yeah, yeah, good one. I don't know, like like I would say like on his list, um, watches that are awesome. Like I don't think I'd ever buy a Blancpain. Yeah. Um, like the 50 fathoms, I think like the closest I would get would be to the original 50 fathoms of 45, and that probably would be a way too big of a watch. And again, do I want to spend that kind of money on a on that watch? I really would have to love the 50 fathoms, and there's people here who really love the 50 fathoms and own the 50 fathoms. I'm not knocking the 50 fathoms at all. It's iconic. It looks great. I just don't really love it. So Blancpain wouldn't be on my list. I'm not interested in any of the Type 20s, or 21s or 19s or whatever. Their dress timepieces I find them really kind of bland. Um, Hamilton, I mean, I've done that. I probably wouldn't buy another Hamilton again. No disrespect to Hamilton. I've got the khaki, um, whatever, the field watch, field khaki mechanical. I've gotten it. To me that was the one to get, right. Um, Although I saw like a khaki field mechanical chrono on Toppers last week. It was on the bunch strap. It looked awesome. It looked awesome. and a Valjoux movement on it, and it was like for like $700 in like 95% condition. Like whoever got that watch got a freaking awesome watch. I was actually, I was thinking about it. Ming, I have zero interest in Ming. Breitling, yeah, I would get. I've had a Navitimer Cosmonaut. I definitely would get that same exact watch again. To me, Breitling is a Navitimer. That's the only one that really. Um, I mean, they have some other models that are compelling. I just for me, the Navitimer is it. Grand Seiko definitely. I definitely want. I've had a Grand Seiko. I will definitely get a Grand Seiko. You know, um, again, ball probably nah. And Tudor Black Bay, never say never. Never say never with the Tudor Black Bay. I've owned the Black Bay 58 3 times. I love those snowflake hands, so I'll never say never on that watch. Um, that's fair. BP isn't for everyone. That's why other dive watches exist. LOL. Yeah. Um, I'd more likely to buy a Villeray before 50 fathoms, but there are other dress watches I'd want more. Pre-owned CQ. So the CQ43 is an interesting timepiece with a big date. That's an interesting watch. That's also a very pricey diver. The thing with that watch, and I like the way it looks. And would we consider Glasu's original horology? Maybe we would. I don't know. Um, I guess, is it high horology? Um, that watch is too big. Like the 40 millimeter or 39 millimeter CQ, zero interest. I'm not interested in that watch. It'd be the big date, and I think that watch would be too big on me. I would get a Navi 46, but it would have to be a different colorway than they offer right now. Ah, yeah. Navi 46. I have a 6 3/4 interest. I tried one of those on just because I thought it would be ridiculous on my wrist. It wasn't. I mean, it was big, but it wasn't like ridiculous on my wrist like I thought it would be. My next watch is going to be a CQ. Yeah, that I think Wolfgang has one of those, and that's a beautiful watch. It is. It's just too big. It's just too big. That watch is too big on my wrist. It just wouldn't. It just wouldn't look good. You know, like I'd be like obsessed about the. I mean, I love the big date um, on it. I think Glasuit does big date just as good as anybody. Glasuite original. Glasuite. They do the big date just as good as anybody, in my opinion. And they got it in that diver and they made it look good. And that bicolor is a fantastic watch, and you should definitely get it. I wish that would work for me. Yeah, great choice. So anyway, good week for Chris. Good videos, good discussion. Um, Made me think about a couple things for sure. And yeah, hopefully one of these days we'll get him back on the channel. He used to come. We gave him a few times. Gave him a few times on some of the live chats back in the day. Um, hey, so next Wednesday, it's not going to be Watch Soup Light anymore. It's not going to be light. So, read into that however you want to read into it. It's not going to be light. Hey, Bobby, back in the day, my dad bought a Frederic Constant High Life. White I found it a couple months ago. I want to sell it. Do you know what's how I do not know off the top of my head. However, Fiery Kiss, go on eBay. See, that's how I would price it. I would go on eBay and see what sold items were. Um, Go on Watch You Seek, go on Reddit, see what people have been asking. You may not be able to find out what it actually sold for. Use what they're asking for, and then use eBay as a reference for the sales. right? And that's how I would do it. Right off the top of my head, I don't know. I've never owned a fruit croissant. I never sold one. So I don't want to BS you that way. What? Yeah, yeah. Full fat watch soup. Not the fullest fat watch soup. What? Very good on the ghost. Thank you, way man. Um, no, I mean, no, Clayton's coming back next week. I mean, like, no, I mean, Sanjay's not able to make it. Um, Sanjay, I think, Sanjay's got like a lot going on, like most of us do. And I think, man, that'd be great. That'd be great to have him, Clayton and I back together again. I thought that was when Watch Soup was at its peak, right? And like, look, me and Clayton, I think we do a great job too. Clayton is so good at the note taking, right? I mean, like, I wish I was as good as he was in regards to breaking down a video. He does such a great job, and I feel like like that's something for me to shoot for and aspire to. Um, he's great at breaking it down. I think I do a decent job of keeping the flow going with the whole stream and with the chat. And Sanjay was also great at breaking things down. They both have great opinions on whatever topic that we have in discussion. But no, 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 yeah, Clayton will be back next week, and I think we're gonna stick to Wednesday nights as our night. When I was in AD last year, the Omega Seamaster 300 Heritage caught my eye, but I'm at risk of getting too many time watches. Yeah, there's no such thing. No such thing. Soup teas. Yeah. Upvote the stream. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No problem. And if I manage to sell it, I want to add some cash to buy a Breitling Super Ocean Heritage B20. All right. Yeah. Super Ocean. Wow. 44 steel and red gold case. Yeah. I mean, I like the Super Ocean. And if you like the red gold um, a case, and you have the money to do it, go for it. I love red gold, right? Um, so I think, yeah, man, that's a banger of a watch. Um, I consider a Peacock tourbillon diver. Okay, there you go. Thanks, Uncle. Well, guys. Anyway, hey, yeah. So next week, let's welcome Clinton back. I hope you guys will be there for that. And I'm gonna try to come on. Last week I promised that I would do a Friday stream. I wasn't able to make it. Hopefully I could do it. This Friday we do like a weekend review of all the releases this week. That's why it's a review. Anyway, guys, have a great night. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay cool if the weather's hot. Stay warm if the weather's not. Wow, that rhymed. Anyway, have a good one. Good night, guys.